So, Marko, it's great to have you with us. In your biography, you say that you started in photojournalism and then moved to documentary when you became a freelancer. Tell us a bit about your entry into photography generally, what brought you in the first place, what inspired you, and what the difference is between being a photojournalist and a documentary photographer in your perspective.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, David. Well, it's one of the things that's sometimes very hard to distinguish and to precisely define, but I don't know if this kind of separation is even necessary nowadays. But let's say that since we already had the chance to hear that I come from a previous century, right? I was born in 1981. So really, I started young with photography. I always loved, as a kid, taking pictures, looking around. That was my kind of sport, to look at things. And out of this, some passion really was born that later turned into a profession. But my beginnings in professional photography were connected with still working on film and long days in a darkroom. So when I started with, I was 18 when I got my first full-time job in a daily newspaper, and this is really how it. I was already hooked, obviously, to this idea of recording the world with my images. I didn't know much about photography, or especially not what photojournalism is, documentary photography is. I was learning along the way, and before I got into more, let's say, academic praxis later in life of learning about this world of photography, for me, the praxis was more present in my life. My background, my basic education is actually in economy, that I was studying economy and working as a photojournalist at the time. And maybe after all these years, I would say that especially in this contemporary world where everything is so intertwined and mixed and so on, maybe the main difference would be that, as a photojournalist, you are paid to bring certain, let's say, type of photos that your editors expect you to, and to illustrate a magazine with stories and so on. It's not that someone who is maybe more into documentary work doesn't do the same, but let's say that for me, the key difference is the amount of freedom that you take for yourself. So maybe maybe it's not so much connected with this definition and division, but for me personally it is, because when I decided to leave this space of pure photojournalism and working for the media and so on, it was exactly for this reason. I was feeling that I'm not free enough to contribute in my own way and to, somehow use my own sense and feeling and approach to the stories and how I see the world. It was more like, you should do things like this or like that because they are done like this or like that for hundreds of years. And yeah, this was maybe even the main motivation. Besides to leave the world of photojournalism somewhere in 2010, it doesn't mean still I need to be very, very precise. I'm still operating in this domain because I'm contributor for Le Monde or New York Times. And of course, when I'm doing these assignments, I'm a photojournalist, meaning that I use all the ethical, knowledge or knowledge about ethics, knowledge about how things are done and so on. But then I'm trying to be creative as well and to contribute in some new ways if it's possible, although the maneuver space is not that big in this sense when you work for the media. And then in the documentary realm, when I work on my own projects, more and more, I take all the freedom that I can and try to be very imaginative and to find some new ways for me. I'm not thinking about generally new ways because a lot has been seen and it's very hard to operate in completely new way. But for example, something new from my point of view, how I would approach some subject.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Well, you've given us a presentation which I'm going to control while you talk about it. So let me start that off and tell us a little bit about the black and white images that we're going to see.
Yeah, so at the beginning of my career, as I said, it was so late 90s, and people who are now participants in this pleasant chat of ours need to know that probably some of them are younger, and it was really a different time, and especially here in Serbia, because somehow we still lag behind the world, and we were lagging behind back then as well. And internet was not that present as today. It was really slow internet. The amount of data and type of data that you could find at the time was really much more scarce than today. So I started, the type of knowledge that I was getting and the inputs from my editors and so on. It was all the traditional, second half of 20th century photography, where you need to compose things well, where still black and white photography was the thing in documentary. I mean, that's how I was thinking about it at the time. Of course, we were using color films. It's not that I worked actually for the media at the time on film, so we were still developing in a dark room. So my assignment was like, I go out, I shoot, I bring back film, they develop it, I bring the film or even printed photos from the film to the editor, then editor chooses what is good to be used and so on. But for me personally, again, at that time, I was feeling that this black and white, well-composed photography was something, the Bresson-esque kind of approach was something that is the point. And I was constantly struggling, but let's say jumping from the world of this more authorial or artistic approach to seeing the world, and photojournalistic, which needed to be objective as well. And for example, at some point, the first photo that we've seen, a very blurry photo with some marks in the sky.
This one.
Maybe at that time, yes. I mean, maybe somewhere around that time, I was starting to be aware that maybe only this, let's say, aesthetical approach to photography is not something that satisfies me as an author. I was thinking that there needs to be something else, that photography needs to tell something about the world around us. And yeah, this photo was actually made from my balcony during the bombing of Serbia by NATO. So this is the anti-aircraft guns shooting in the air, trying to, bring some rocket down.
Yeah.
And this, I was very inexperienced. I didn't know technically how to do things. My equipment this was made, I think, with Zenith camera, black and white film. So of course, I intentionally put this photography here as just an idea that I had some idea on my mind that it's worthwhile, and that my duty actually as someone who has camera is to document events around me, and not only to present them in aesthetically pleasing or beautiful way. So this is when this idea of me being someone who is communicating more with photography started to evolve, and yeah, it kept going until today. It's just that I changed the ways how I was growing up as a person, and as a photographer. I was changing the means of how and the capabilities to tell and the story with my photos, and to approach the world through the viewfinder, because there are so many different ways. And at the beginning, so the images that we look now, at the beginning, it was this purely like very curious and very learned way of approaching that I actually was thinking is something that is the ultimate goal in photography. I was even flipping images upside down like this one. Yeah, sometimes. I mean, I of course today I don't. I think that I'm very open. I try to be very open toward different ideas, but I like when they're executed well and with some point, not just because there is an effect to it. So even today, I'm not doing it in my documentary work, obviously, because I like the reality I like to present it as it is. But then sometimes if I see very well executed, playful photos that, somehow give us something that we didn't see or we didn't know, I like it in other people's work as well, not only in my own. So
these black and white photos, you were shooting on film the whole time for these, and were you just sort of experimenting with what you were seeing and viewing and so on?
Exactly, and many of these images later ended up in one body of work that I was actually creating for years. Although at the beginning it was not intentional, and from the beginning I was not aware what I was doing. But at some point it turned out that this is actually about my reality and the country I live in and the changes that happen along the way. So, somewhere around in 2005, I got maybe the first, let's say, serious and very responsible photojournalistic job. And then at that time, I didn't give up on this idea. I'm still documenting, maybe in different manner, the reality around me. But already at that time, before 2005, the idea of, this purely very well composed, golden triangle, whatever kind of photography of 50s, 60s, and 70s, it somehow vanished from my point of view, and I turned to some other practices that I was thinking are more that offer more in the way how I actually see the world and how I want to see it and to approach it. I mean, I'm very emotional when it comes to these photos, because it's already a long time ago it happened, and I don't find them. I'm never because there are some people who are, for example, ashamed of. I think that they are maybe even in terms of the craftsmanship of photography, maybe they are even among my best created works if we speak purely about photography. It's just that later in life I came to the point where I don't want this aesthetics of photography to be predominant, but something else, the message that I want to share with the world and to set it. For example, this photo is has been done in the same manner as described, but it's much younger in this sense. I think it's after 2010. So I'm still approaching the world from time to time, depending on the circumstance and so on, in this manner, but less and less, because what we will see in my documentary work is maybe a bit different. I mean,
so Marko, can I ask you one thing before we go to the next? I'm just curious what happened with the black and white images. Did you make a book? Like, did you ever?
No, I never did. I was very, I don't know. This is something that we already talked a bit before we started about my relation to my own work and so on. I didn't have this knowledge and idea at the beginning that it has some value. I was just, I was thinking, okay, I'm creating some nicely looking images. I've been participating in some more like this artistic expositions and so on. I've been getting some awards. It was for me really incredible. Like I was so confused. I was like, how is this photography of mine better than someone else's photography, because the other one is so good as well. So I was not even, I didn't have the right sense of value to it. So I never actually, I never managed to do anything permanent. I mean, all of these images are still, I keep all the negatives. They are still in my possession. I know where they are. And maybe someday I decide to put it into something different. But I think it's connected not only with my personality and so on, the fact that when I was younger, I didn't know that much as I do now. It's maybe connected to objectively the fact that at the time when I was producing this work, the form of photo book was something so distant and so hard to execute from little country of Serbia. it was not something that was so common to me. I didn't even know what are the mechanisms of doing it. So probably this is why this idea, among some other reasons, never crossed my mind. But it's all there. I mean, I'm often talking about this work, and I was more and more somehow, while getting back to it and searching through my archives, scanning and so on, I was thinking there must be some value to it, because many of these sites and these photos, they are a testimony of how this country looked like only 20, 30 years ago, which historically is not much, but still a lot of it did change.
A lot of things, a lot of things have happened at that time.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about this project on Romanian youth that we're going to see now, New Dawn over the Carpathians.
Yeah.
Was this one of your first color documentary projects? What drew you to this topic?
Exactly. So before this project, I did. So I was working in the media. I was not satisfied with it, and at some point we had some kind of a small masterclass with Dirk-Jan Visser. I don't know if you know about this photographer. Yeah, he came to Belgrade. We were this group of photographers that was gathered at the time. We were young, and our goal for this masterclass was that we do some kind of a longer form project, and this is something that I was really craving for. I didn't know at the time that this is the form that so much would engage me and that interests me so much. So I did a body of work about my high school friend who went to French Foreign Legion, came back to Serbia, and he started. He tried to reconnect with the society, which was not really successful. So I had the approach to some very awkward and interesting personality. And this is actually the first project that had this kind of form. And I spent significant amount of time with an individual in very intimate space. I didn't include it here because I wanted to present this body of work that spans over years, because Legionnaire was one time deal, let's say. I did it in a relatively short period of time and never came back to it. I don't know why, because it had potential as well. But then in 2010, I was accepted for the World Press Photo Masterclass for young photographers from Southeastern Europe. The general name of it was See New Perspectives, or Southeastern Europe New Perspectives. And this project came as a result of this masterclass, actually, because what we did back in the days is that they expected of us that we produce a body of work outside of our country of origin, but in the region. And I decided, because somehow for me, ever since the story about young people here, of course, I was at the time younger than now, so it was still very relevant and close to my heart. I was not a teenager, obviously, but even back then. But I was thinking that this kind of the kind of story about youth of the Balkans is lacking a little bit. I wasn't seeing many works in different areas of creation or communication that we're talking about this specific subject. And I was interested in it because you can tell a lot by only observing the youth and perspectives and how they behave, what's left to them, what they're dealing with, and so on. So I was thinking that through observing youth, we could project somehow how this part of the world will look like in 20, 30 years from that moment on, because they will be in charge, they will be the ones who are, as they are already now, I mean, some of them. So while Romania...
Was that focus on youth because you thought that the kind of the portrayal of the Balkans was a bit stereotypical, or there was a particular, what was the stereotypes that you were working against with this focus on youth?
Yeah, actually, I mean, one of the objectives, of course, of this masterclass was to avoid stereotypes, although it's very hard with this part of the world. But then I was thinking that maybe exactly, because we had so much of we had recent wars, turmoil, a lot of negativity that came out of this part of the world through media and through different kinds of reporting. So I was thinking, okay, as well, okay, it's somehow behind. It's still not. I mean, we still have a lot of trouble and issues here. But I was thinking, let's take a look at the generations that actually started, that grew up after, or they were raised after all of this happened. For example, this generation of teenagers in Romania, they were born after the fall of communism, so after Ceausescu and so on. So I was trying to learn about them, how to confront them almost in a way with this stereotype that people have about this part of the world, and to show that they are beautiful, confused, and that maybe the perspectives and what is offered to them at that point is not much, but they are trying to use whatever they can, to make something out of their lives. It's very hard, of course. That would be too ambitious for I was around 30 at the time, so I was not inexperienced, no, even less. I was not an experienced photographer, but I mean, to make a project of such a scope and reach would be too ambitious. But then I concentrated more on this transformation that happens, because the path is almost the same in all the countries here and probably around. It's not only connected to the Balkans, it's very much present in other parts of the world.
So when you, I'm just curious, when you finished the project, did you show it to some of the people you followed? And if so, what did they think of it?
I did. I'm still in contact with some of them, and just recently it was 10 years anniversary in a way of in 2020. So I did some series of posts on Instagram trying to, and then some of them came back to me and they said how beautifully I portrayed them and so on. They were really satisfied with somehow with the result and the type of, I don't know if I've included, I think I did yes, I think I did. We'll see that at the end of this work. Really, the kind of relation that I established with these young people, it was incredible for me. It was my first experience of this sort, and it was really so valuable for me throughout my life and career. I keep remembering it and coming back to it, because I was a foreigner who, by all means, I didn't speak the language. I was from a different country. I was of older age and so on. But we somehow established really this very, very close relationship. And at the end of my trip to some of these distant places in Romania, we exchanged some gifts. So I was given one little box, wooden box of treasure, I call it. We will see it. And this was maybe from the whole project. I think that I was not ready yet for to photographically express all that I wanted to say through this project. I was still too young in terms of, not by age, but in terms of what I was capable of doing. But I think that it showed me the path that I definitely want to pursue later. And additionally, I realized that this experience of making these close connections to people and showing your interest into them and getting back from them something very valuable, that was the most important part of it for me, even more than the photos. Now, when I take a look at this project, I have so many, so many things that I say I could have done better, or used this opportunity to say this or that, or to edit, but this is all irrelevant at the end in my own personal sense, because the overall impression is it's very personal, it's very emotional. So this is the most valuable thing that I think I got out of it. But I don't know.
So I just have a question to kind of clarify. Earlier on, you said it's a project you keep going back to. Is that in presentations, or you mean you go back shooting there still?
No, unfortunately, but when this part I was starting to tell a bit about, when the 10-year anniversary, many of the people I worked with, I mean, teenagers, they're not teenagers anymore. They came back to me replying and saying how nice it was. And so there was this obvious idea that, like in many other bodies of work of other photographers, there was this idea of maybe paying a visit now and seeing where they are, because many of them,
Exactly.
as already projected back then, they either don't live in their places of origin. So the great majority of them, I think 90%. And then many are not even in Romania. And this is the common path that they take. I mean, the youth from the Balkans in general. So this would be really interesting maybe to find them and try to see where they are now. But I'm obviously struggling with this consistency throughout my work, because I don't know, I'm struggling between this dilemma of where is the line of decency and what becomes an exploitative practice, and what has some. I need to find a really good point why I would do this, except for making another body of work of the similar kind that would for sure photographically be interesting. Whatever you see 10 years later, whatever it is, a rock, a mountain, and not
It's interesting.
it's going to be interesting. Is it the same? How did it change? Is it still in the same place? But I'm trying to figure out why would I be the one who would be, because I was the one who was following one part of their life or one moment in their lives. So yeah, maybe I'm too harsh to myself or when deciding about these things. But yes, this idea crossed my mind, I still haven't given up on it. So maybe at some point I will try to do something about it, because it would be interesting for me in a way to know the destinies and to see how he developed, and did some of my predictions, if I managed to make any through this body of work, were they right or wrong? And yeah, so I mean, as I said, it's not, this form is very familiar to all of us. There are so many great photographers who did this kind of 20 years later or whatever. Several bodies of work cross my mind.
So when you say when you're working in this way where you photograph people for a longer period of time, or you might return, do you write a lot when you're shooting? Do you interview people? Or I'm just curious, because a lot of the images, I'm so curious about the people in it.
Well, again, at the time when I was doing it, I was not so prone to this practice. I don't know whether it was like I was so concentrated on photographing and making these experiences and so on. I was more concentrated on this act. But later, I mean, I did do some. I have some diaries from this period that are my personal, and then some of their writings. I know some of their histories very well, and I can repeat their names even today and so on. So there is additional material that could be like used, but at the time I didn't have this vision, because I don't know, it was slightly different for me. As I said, I think that I was not capable of getting the full scope of this project at the time when I was doing it, because it was the first of its kind for me, and I was a bit, maybe even I was maybe pushing myself more towards, doing one specific thing. This is the little box of treasure. So on the last day when I was leaving from Vatra Dorne, which was one of the places that I spent a lot of time in, and I made some really great friends there. I gave them as a present some photos from my archive. I printed them on some place that I found, some small print shop. But those were not their photos, but photos how I actually how I was thinking that they are, like some photos from my archive that correspond to their personal characteristics and how I saw them and so on. And so in return, before jumping into train, they gave me this box with their belongings, whatever they could find in a short period of time. But it was so it was so incredible and so touching. And I remember that we were all crying when I was leaving. It was really, it's incredible. I mean, I don't know how to even explain this kind of connection that we developed. And I felt as well that it's a privilege in a way of being a photographer sometimes, because sometimes when you pay attention to some people, and these people, young people living in these small cities and villages, are very honest and very different from their peers from the cities, then you establish incredible kind of like, you know, I never felt probably this before or after in my life. And it's interesting now that we are jumping to another body of work. It's the same topic, but in my own country, in Serbia, it's similar topic. I mean, the life of the youth in post-industrial cities, done slightly after the Romanian story. But the kind of connections and the emotional aspect of it is quite different, and my personal experience with it is quite different than in Romania, because for most of the time while working on it, I can't say that I wasn't accepted, but it was not even near to what I felt in Romania. I think that,
wow,
yeah,
that's interesting. You would think it would be the other way around.
exactly, but I think it's actually this, you know, because I was maybe too close. I was one of their own, and I, you know, I was someone who can maybe, I mean, of course, it's another point of view. I'm not sure if it was about this at all, but you know, I was someone who could potentially. I was close to them. I was from the same country, speaking the same language. Maybe I was at some point, you know, I was observed as some kind of potential threat, or I don't know, someone who can exploit them in some inappropriate way or whatever. But it was different. I mean, I established some fine connections with these young people as well. I'm not saying I can't generalize, but as a general experience, it was quite different, and that's interesting. Yes, and that's something that
I mean, it is interesting because it means that in certain circumstances, being the outsider can lead to a closer relationship than being the insider.
exactly. Yes, and
was
that's
good
was
point,
this a
David.
body of work that you produced for another workshop, or was this a body of work that you initiated yourself?
yeah, I mean, after we finished with the official part of the master class, and after we had the exhibition and so on, I think that they said that they have some additional, very small budget. And they said, if you want to continue working on something like this, now you can do it in your own country as well, whatever, we will give you some additional budget. It was really a small budget, like maybe just enough for some traveling and so on. But I was more, it was not because of the budget or anything. I was trying to ride this wave and to continue working on this because it really interested me. So I started doing it in Serbia, and then I continued on my own. So I was doing this over the course of a few years again. I think it was, for sure, it was 2011 and 12, and then some of it in 2013. Before, again, I mean, at some point I was not sure where to, because it became repetitive. I could, you know, find another city that is of the same, that looks the same or feels the same, and where youth lives in a similar way, but I didn't know what to do further with it. So at some point I stopped, but yeah, it spanned for several, of course, when I say several years, people understand that it's not that I was actively every day doing this story. It was from time to time when I could find, because I was always a working photographer, and for me it was always a balance between, this is a personal work, like the projects that I try to approach like individual, like my own point of interest, and then I must do all the other regular jobs and commercial jobs in order to survive and sustain myself, and now my family as well. So even back then, it was more simple for me, but still I was attached to some permanent, you know, commercial assignments and obligations and duties. So whenever I could find time, I was doing something with the story and some others.
With those commercial assignments or that other work that you were doing, did you find them influencing these sorts of projects, or the other way around? Were these projects influencing the assignments and the more photojournalistic work you were doing? Was there a crossover?
Well, yeah, I think it's even a bit more complicated than this, because there are some three different, I see them as almost the parallel tracks that never meet in my work. Like there is the personal work that I produce, then there is a work that comes as a consequence of this personal work that can be put into drawer of some paid documentary work where I was paid to do documentary assignments of this type, but not this scope or not with this idea, but of this kind. And then there is the commercial work that is completely different. My commercial work, and this is maybe something that is different from, I mean, I'm not idealizing it, but for someone who lives in some Western country, I've heard that numerous times, people specialize in certain directions, in certain areas, and they do certain type of work always. And even their commercial work is based on what they do otherwise of their personal interest. In Serbia, commercial work means really a basic, like, you know, the pure commercial work in this sense, like the corporate events or something quite different from this. So it has nothing to do technically. I was never invited, I think, never ever. I think that I was invited even in Serbia based on my CV or portfolio in a way, but I was never invited in Serbia or almost never to do a commercial job because people wanted my point of view and my sensitivity or whatever. It was more like, you are, you know, we can see that you know how to photograph, and then we are sure that you can do this job for us, but we want it to be done like this. And then, you know, of course, you can apply if you're, I always apply every shooting I make, even nowadays. I'm never tired of it. I try to be creative and to apply my own touch to whatever the most boring commercial event. But sometimes it's really hard to achieve this, you know, because there are literally, again, the ways how you photograph some, you know, corporate event. There are literally the frames that you need to have and so on. So it was more complicated. And just, I think that some of my actually maybe international engagements like the New York Times and Le Monde partially came out of my engagement into this kind of stories. Although again, even they don't use me often because it's not the world of photojournalism today. I'm not doing long pieces for them. It's usually the daily news, you know, the things that are happening at some moment in Serbia. And I enjoy it. It's just that I'm really a slow guy, and I prefer to do this kind of projects where I dedicate more time and effort to trying to figure out something and then maybe to get something.
I'm sure that's pretty much the case for every photographer, right?
Yeah, this sounds quite familiar.
I would like to focus on the long-term projects, dedicate, but then it's the reality of how do you sustain that practice, and
sure.
And it always involves that combination of doing other work that you have to do to make time and money available for the work that you want to do. Marko, there's a question from Andre in the audience. Wants to ask for you to explain a little bit more for this project with some examples. Like, how were you made to feel unwelcome or less welcome by the community in Serbia compared to the one in Romania? And how did you cope with that, and how did you respond to that to keep working?
Yeah, well, I don't know, maybe there is part of it that is connected with the you know, history of the country as well, or whatever, although I don't think that Serbia and Romania are that different. As a matter of fact, they are very similar to each other, and even the past is similar up to some point. But I think that maybe it's a personal, maybe after Romania was so successful, and so, you know, all the things that I described, maybe I was expecting using the same logics, like, well, now I'm doing it in my own country, it's going to be really easy, and people will be really approachable. Not many people wanted to, like, even if they were there, even if I managed to get insight into lives of some young people living in this post-industrial, I call them, like, environments and so on. I was not very, I sensed that I was not that welcomed as in Romania. They were, you know, very often, you know, trying to figure out what exactly am I doing, which is, of course, very logical. I'm not saying that there is anything wrong with it. I try to be very open and communicate a lot, every idea, and explain it multiple times to all the persons involved. This is the only way to gain trust and to actually do these things. But it was really, for me, it was obvious, and especially that all these cities have this component of, there was an industrial complex. You can see that at the beginning I was photographing some people working there, like a very young guy who was, at the time when I photographed him, I think he was 19, but he started working in a factory with 14. I have an interview with him, which you can see under this body of work on my website. So he started working very early in his life, and it's illegal, of course, I mean, nowadays. But, I think that for these reasons, there was suspicion from those who were in positions of power and who were a bit, reluctant about me being there and snooping around what was happening. Although my goal was never like, it was completely, I was never going to accuse the factory saying, oh, you were employing 14-year-old guy. It was not, I mean, it is mentioned in the interview because I think it's an important fact to understand how things work in Serbia, but it was not an acquisition or a daily news where I would accuse them and say, this and that. But this kind of, it was, the access was not easy many of times, both to young people and to institutions I wanted to work with for different reasons. Yeah. In Romania, it was all much more simple. On the first day of my, when I was in Vatra Dornei, they brought me my great friend, Andrei Punkovski, a fantastic Romanian photographer. We somehow exchanged. He came to Serbia to work on a project about religion. So I was trying to help him here. And it was the real example of networking that was the aim of people who organized the World Press Photo Masterclass, of course. And he helped me with my idea in Romania. So it turned out that his mother is a teacher in a school. So she brought me to school. I was introduced to some young people, and those who spoke fluent English, which were many in Romania because they brought Cartoon Network and similar very early there. So they just were like, they completely opened from the beginning, and they wanted to introduce me to others and to guide me around and to show me how their lives look like. In Serbia, I felt less enthusiasm about my presence there. Not in all the cases, but in many.
Let's move to the last project, which brings us into the present. So this is 2020 onwards, last day of school.
Yes.
What's the theme here? What do you mean by dying of a nation, brackets, in progress?
Well, it's pretty, if you take a look at like the UN reports and so on, even the statistics is very dramatical, because it says that until 2050, Serbia will lose almost 1.5 million inhabitants, which is, we have 7 in total. So it's really dramatical. And whenever I see the statistics, I'm a bit, I'm the guy who is trying to find the emotional connection to things. Statistics is only numbers, and people here around the region and worldwide probably know about this problem of depopulation. But I was thinking how to visualize something that is of such a scope and such importance, and still make it emotional and so on. Because of course, many other media, not many photographers maybe here, but in general, this is something that's being talked about, and it will be talked about in the future. But I actually, while traveling in the past, I managed to see some of these areas for some other assignments. I managed to see these areas that are literally dying out in front of our eyes. Villages and abandoned parts of Serbia, mostly in the south, southeast, but in some other parts as well. And
it's young people leaving to the cities, or like a brain drain, or what is?
Yeah, it's complicated. It's due to a multiple set of reasons, and that's what makes it even more tempting for documenting, because there are so many factors that influence this, and it spans back in the past as well. It didn't start 10 years ago. It started, after World War II, and there were multiple processes that were influencing it. But I would say that the main reasons are economical, because, people there don't have any valuable resources to live from. These areas are completely left on their own. There was any significant investment there. All that existed after World War II, while we have communism and this excitement of brotherhood and unity. There were some factories, there were some communes, there was some agriculture. But after all this turmoil we had, especially during 90s and so on, it all started decreasing. And so literally these areas are completely left on their own. Nobody technically, I mean, institutionally, in terms of the state, takes care about them. And so, people are forced to leave to the nearby city and then to a bigger city. And many young people go further because they don't have the university nearby. They need to travel for 100 to 100 kilometers. And then when they get there, they see the new opportunities. Then they maybe go even further, like a part of a brain drain. And then what's left is the almost abandoned environments where you still have some traces of life. So I didn't want to photograph only empty buildings. So I was thinking, okay, because I saw these schools, and then in Serbia we have I don't know, the statistics is not really good here, sometimes with a reason, sometimes without a reason. So there, I couldn't find the official statistic data, but from what I could find is that there are around 100 schools in Serbia that have less than 5 pupils in them. And then there are hundreds more that already stopped working, that are completely abandoned and so on. So my story was, I was thinking, okay, I was not playing, but I was using this idea. The school portrait is something very common in Serbia. We all have this image at the end of the school year with our peers standing in front of the school and so on. And then I was trying to use this very common and very present and very emotional object that we all can understand to present it how it, in a way, I was literally in this project trying to be this school photographer, going from school to school and photographing these school children in their environment. And I think that now, after I finished one part of it, I'm still working on this story, trying to figure out where to go next and how to evolve it more into certain direction. I think that it's very...
Oh, wow. This image.
Yeah, this is like the former spa, Zvonachka Spa. It's a spa complex that was really well known in the middle of some very beautiful canyon and so on. Lots of potential, but it was completely abandoned. The hotel was ruined. So it says a lot about how these areas are not being anyhow taken care of. Even if when there was some potential there, it vanished. It was just left to to die in a way. So
do you know how long you will be working on this project? Is there an end date to it, or?
Yeah, I don't know, because it depends on my own resources and on, again, some feeling. For example, this year I haven't been doing much still about it. This was my master's project as well at the LCC in a way. So I don't know. I mean, there is still potential and the need for doing it, but I'm becoming a bit repetitive with it. So I can find new schools. I can go to Bulgaria or Croatia or surrounding countries, and I can find the same or very similar sites, because this problem is not only Serbia, it's the whole region.
It's in the region.
So maybe this would be because this was so far done in Serbia. But I don't know, I really need some help with it as well. In some other occasion, I got some insights from some people. So I still don't know. I want to continue working on it, but I'll see until when. And then I wanted to say that I did find a lot of archival material, again, not very structured. Usually it was either in some abandoned schools or some schools still working, or with some teachers who were previously, working with pupils in these schools and so on. So I did find this was very important for me to find photographs from the same areas and same schools that I revisit today, that were made, again, historically only 50 or 40 years ago. And you can see these areas were never very prominent, or they were never very, rich or whatever. but you can see that there was some potential, that there was life there. They're literally like forensic evidence from the past, right. That, you know, some life existed, but then something went completely wrong, and nowadays it looks like this. So as a comparison,
portrait one of the surviving teachers. Yes,
exactly. And like the way how she looks and how she's dressed, and the kind of atmosphere she's in, I really like this portrait because it tells so much. You know, these people literally they even live in some other time. It's not only that it visually looks like this. I think that their feelings, their knowledge, how they approach children, it comes from their youth, from how they started. They didn't change it much. So it's literally like walking in some cases in a time capsule. How some of these schools look. Many were, you know, along the way they were somehow renewed, and you know, they look sometimes even surprisingly good for a school where you have only one child. You don't expect this, but in many cases they literally look like 50, 60 years ago. You know,
So Marko.
It's very
sorry, David.
Go ahead. I can say she looks very strict. I wouldn't be misbehaving in her class.
Exactly. She does look very strict, actually. Yeah. So Marko, earlier on, you mentioned you would continue this project, but it also depended on resources.
Yeah.
And that's actually a question I have for you. We talked a bit about you working for Le Monde and for New York Times. How do you see kind of this part of the industry? You mentioned it a bit, but to take assignments, how do you kind of sustain, well, documentary making, I would say?
Yeah, I must be honest, it's very hard, especially, I mean, it's not easy for anyone. The amount, I mean, the fact that I work for New York Times and Le Monde, for sure, it sounds very nice, and it's valuable. When I present my CV, of course, it looks impressive, but honestly, I don't get a lot of assignments because this part of the world, I'm local photographer. I'm considered by them as a local photographer as well, which is completely fair. There are so many who are great in this big world. So the amount of interest is not that big, of course. New York Times is not that interested in this part of the world, or Le Monde. So they just come from time to time, and I can't afford myself to rely completely on this. Actually, this is only an additional income for me, which comes as a very nice surprise every time. And then it helps with sustaining myself, and maybe, you know, investing some of it into some of my stories as well. But for me, the sustainable way is of surviving, and comes predominantly from commercial assignments. So this is the reality of life, and I'm very. I mean, I feel very good. It's psychologically as well, because I have to do so many assignments that I don't cherish. I try to be I'm a professional photographer. I'm doing it for 20 years. So I approach every shooting in the same manner, not saying, or I'm too good for this or whatever. But the objective fact is that sometimes these kind of assignments that you're getting locally are not nor glamorous, nor they have any point. You know, it's literally applied work where when you send a WeTransfer file to a client, you can delete all the images. There's nothing that stays for you. So no, literally, I mean, it's like that. So I feel good when I really feel worthwhile when there is a New York Times or Le Monde, because I know that what I do here at least is going to have some point, and some people will see it, and it will be
visibility
presented. Yeah, so in this sense, it really means a lot to me. But financially, not that much, because of course, I mean, we are all struggling the amount of assignments, and I'm not the only photographer in the region. There are so many great photographers around here as well. So we all kind of compete, and I'm awful with this. I don't like this kind of. This is a competitive industry. It's a fact, and we all need to find our own ways to navigate it. But I'm not really good at that. I don't like this feeling of, you know, that we have to jump on each other and fight against each other for jobs. And sometimes it is like this. So sometimes I'm just, trying to be silent and try to find my own ways how to do it. And then recently, maybe too late, maybe it's never too late. I mean, I started working more on making myself more capable for getting grants. And
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
yeah,
I think I'm doing the same circle where I used to do a lot of assignments and then using that money to do projects. And I was like, okay, this is becoming a bit crazy. It's like a never ending circle.
Exactly.
So now I'm applying to grants as well.
That's another ending circle. Yes.
Yeah, it's also a circle. You're right. It's all a circle. What are we doing?
Yeah. But Marko, one of the things that you've identified there by talking about commercial work, assignment work, and documentary work is that all these things have different value, right? And value's not the same as price or money. The commercial work does have a financial value. It produces the resource. The assignment work has a little bit of financial value, but its value is the name and the reputation and the visibility. And then the documentary work has a lot of personal value and a lot of kind of research and investigative value. And I think that's a very important thing for people to keep in mind. First of all, it's a major achievement to be a working photographer for 20 years. Are there moments where you have to do work outside of photography to support the family? Do you need to teach, or are you able to do commercial work and actually work inside photography?
Yeah, very, very, very nicely put, David. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the point. I am not, as one of my friends would say, I'm not a cook. I don't know how to do these other things. I'm a photographer throughout my life. So this is what I try to stick to. I was never forced to do anything else. I always managed to support myself through my photography. But then I started, as I said already, I started thinking about some other things in life, how to, because we are all, I'm getting older, and I don't know for how long I could be that competitive as running around and taking all these assignments and my personal work and so on. So, but I again try to find this. Let's say parallel track within photography, not too far away from it. But I like to I like this academic part of it as well, and this kind of approach where I can imagine myself giving lectures and working as a lecturer on some of the universities and so on. And this is what I started actually when I got into the VII ecosystem. That was my initial goal, and I'm really working hard towards it. So this is my goal for the near future, to make myself capable of doing these things as well. So not only necessarily being behind the lens and running around, but maybe, writing about photography, giving lectures, and doing some more, let's say, some work that leans more towards the intellectual part or academic part of it, be it. So yeah, this is something that's ongoing.
That one of the reasons why you did a master's degree, so that you
exactly. That was the main reason, and that was in my application as well, and so on. Otherwise, I'm very much supportive towards the idea of lifelong learning, but I don't know, in some cases, for some practitioners, it's not that necessary, maybe, that you have some title or master's. I'm not discouraging anyone. It's always good to have academic background in something that you like, and you're a professional in this area and so on. But I'm just saying that sometimes some people are very good practitioners without this academic knowledge. I was somewhere in between. I think that I was more on this practical side of things at the beginning, and now I'm starting to lean more towards the other side. And the perfect thing is to combine them somehow, if it's possible. So we will see what the future brings. But yeah, my goal goes in this direction. And the idea with my master's that I pursued over COVID, let's say, from in the past 2 years, was exactly this, that I somehow make myself capable of doing some other things in photography as well.
Yeah. Ilvy, perhaps you want to ask some of the questions from the.
There are many. So Anastas is asking, Marko, when are you going to start working on a mutual Trans-Balkans project?
I think Anastas might be making an offer there.
Yeah, exactly.
Very nice. Well, I remember this and maybe start planning. Why not? I mean, I don't know. It's this part of the world. As much as we are always complaining and so on, you know, in this sense of sometimes we say we would like it just to be boring, and you know, we don't have to be so concerned with all the things happening around us. But there is a huge potential, and I think even more, what I would say is there is a huge need to pursue this kind of communication through visual or any other means about Balkans and about many of the countries here, because we are still in the peak of development, and we have many issues in our societies, and there are multiple things that needs to be solved and supported through this communication. And this is where I get my energy from, literally, because I see the need for this kind of reporting. And again, the idea of transferring this passion and you know, knowledge and capabilities to some young people is equally valid, because I want to make some. I want to contribute to making some future generation capable of it, because I don't think Balkans will ever stop to be the hot topic. It's just how the things are here, how the people are.
Yeah.
So there's another question from Helene Peters. She asks, do you have any goals or dreams for your most recent series, Last Days of School, like a book or a big exhibition? And she says, impressive work, Marko. Sorry, I skipped a very important part.
Thank you so much. Yeah, well, I already did a dummy of the book with the work I did so far, just to see how it plays on the pages, and just to, and I'm pretty much, which is very rare for me to say, I'm satisfied with how it looks. I said to some of my friends, which might, I mean, for someone who doesn't know, but even for someone who doesn't know the political situation and so on, I said that my goal is that I make a small book, very unpretentious, and not a commercial book at all, that I want to be present to somehow reach the table of the Minister of Education of Serbia, you know, so he can flip through it. Because I know that some of these guys working in the politics, they know about this problem and the statistics. They never went to any of these schools to see how the people there are, how these children are being schooled, what are the efforts needed, what are the needs, and so on. So this was like, of course, it's a bit. I'm not saying this is the only goal, but this was literally what I said to myself that I want to do, and I think that I will manage to do it in the future. And I had a really small exhibition in Serbia, and I did have one as a part of masters of my class in London, but just a short edit, because I still am not, I don't know how. I think there is a lot of potential in this body of work, because it says it talks about a really important issue. Yeah. But I need to find appropriate way to present it in the future. So yes, for sure, both book and exhibition are always on my mind when it comes to
two quick observations about that project. I really like that project, and I really like the fact that you took a social issue like depopulation and looked at the statistics, but then found an interesting way to photograph it. So it's not just portraits, they're driven by a particular thing. So it's a really great combination of social issue research and image. And I very much like the way that you're talking about, I want to make a book for the Minister of Education, because it's, you know, it's not always about getting a mass audience. Sometimes it's a very small, precise audience you would like to present the work to. And if it ended up on that person's desk, it's not because everyone has to change policy or whatever, but that's a really important way of thinking about that. So I like the way the project starts, and I like the way you're thinking about how it might finish too.
Thank you so much. Yes, I mean, we can't change the world completely, but we can make all the efforts that we can. Maybe I said, you know, it's a stereotype again. It's not what my unique thought, but you know, if you change something in one person with your work, and maybe especially if that person has some, you know, power to further change things, it's a lot, you know, that it's a lot that you managed to achieve. So yeah, that was my way of thinking in this case.
The last question, if we have time for it, well, we're going to do it anyway. It's the last one from Vincent. He asks, Marko, could you document the situation after the conflict between Croatia and Serbia in the early 2000s?
Could I?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you, I would say, like,
are you interested in?
Okay.
I don't know.
No, I did not. Again, at that time, I was still too young and too inexperienced as a photographer, maybe to approach it, because it was really, again, one of the very complicated issues. But speaking of it, I'm doing actually now, I started a new project. It's just starting to shape, and it's in a very early phases, meaning that I don't have a single image to show yet. But my family origin is very interesting. I'm a typical ex-Yugoslav grandchild, because all of my grandparents were from different parts of ex-Yugoslavia, from the main republics, who believed so much in this idea of brotherhood and unity, which ended up in the bloodshed and all the wars we had. So I'm trying to connect this personal family history and the knowledge of my ancestors and the places they came from and so on, into a narrative about how and why it ended up like it did, and what aspects it has on the lives of some ordinary people, like, for example, myself, and so on. So it is the kind of narrative I'm trying now to I'm leaning as well in my work more towards I'm getting closer to myself and trying to investigate more, not because I think that I'm important or every single person is interesting. It's more that really I figured out that maybe the most valuable and the most knowledgeable way to tell this complicated story about all that happened in the recent past with separation and the war in Yugoslavia and so on, is through personal family history, because, you know, I have a lot of material in this sense there.
Excellent. Yeah.
So I will tell this story a bit late historically. I didn't do it immediately after it happened, but I want to come back to it because it is very telling, and it's shaping as well. I mean, the existence of ex-Yugoslavia and the end, how the way how it ended, it very much influences how we live today. Of course, here, you know, in every of the republics. So it's still very, very present. You know, very much so. There are numerous busts of Tito in many. Wherever I go, I find one in a basement. So
standing somewhere.
It's very interesting. Okay.
Well,
so
thank you, Marko.
Yeah, I think that brings us to the end of our time, Marko, but it's been a great presentation. So it's good to end with a comment from Jaime Carrero, who says, what an inspiring presentation. It's a very tough business. Your perseverance and the quality of your work are admirable.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so
totally agree.
Second that. So it's been really great talking to you, seeing that work, and we really appreciate your time. And
thank you so much.
We look forward to seeing the next project.
Same here.
Thank you, Marko.
Thanks, Marko.
Bye. Ciao.
Thanks. Bye.